Sorry. Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 16, 2023 meeting of the Litchfield Planning Board. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, for which to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll start with the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Kate Stevens, Vice Chair.
Ron Stevens, member.
Kimberly Queenan, Selectman's Rep.
Sam Terrell, member.
Jeremy Robitaille, member.
Welcome. And I assume you've been sworn in?
I have.
Oh,
Who
wonderful.
would like this, by the way? Anyone?
Awesome. Very good.
Keep it for your records.
You can frame it.
Perfect.
Okay, and we want to welcome Jeremy to the Planning Board. And this is your first official meeting, so welcome. Also with us this evening is Jay Mankara from NRPC, our circuit rider, Jay. First off, public input on non-agenda items not on the agenda listed for this evening. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on non-agenda items? And seeing nobody in the audience, I will close public input on non-agenda items, and we will go to number 1 on our agenda this evening, which is our workshop or work session. We have a couple things here in that regard: impact fee update study, home occupations, and northern commercial zone. So I'm going to let our illustrious Mr. Mankara to lead us off in this workshop session. So Jay, it's yours.
So let me just pass out these. This you've seen before. We also sent out everybody for the full study, but I didn't make copies of the full study for everybody, so hopefully you have it. But I've got one copy. We can bring it up on the screen if anybody does have questions. I am going to bring this spreadsheet up. This spreadsheet is, just make this a little bit bigger. So this one is just kind of nice because it allows you, granted it's not side by side, it's a little bit tricky, but it does allow you to compare what we're charging now versus what's proposed. So I figured I would kind of run through that. But just backing up just a little bit, looking at the impact fee ordinance. So the impact fee ordinance is section 1300 of the zoning ordinance, so it is a zoning ordinance. It's pretty detailed, but the key is that if we decide that we want to move forward with this, then what needs to happen is the planning board needs to schedule a public hearing, and then at that public hearing, the planning board needs to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for adoption. So that's kind of the process. So if tonight, the board feels comfortable in taking that action, then the action, I guess, would be a motion to send this to public hearing, and we would try to do that next month. So that's if we get there. Our ordinance was pretty good, so I was basically just going to read to you the purpose and intent of impact fees, because I know it can be confusing. This pretty much follows statute, but it says the following ordinance shall govern the assessment of impact fees for public capital facilities to accommodate the demands of new development on these facilities. This ordinance is intended to assist in the implementation of the town of Litchfield's master plan and capital improvements program. I'm going to come back to that point. Allocate a fair and equitable share of the cost of public facilities to new development, and require new development to contribute its proportional share of funds necessary to accommodate its impact on public facilities, including public school facilities, which is reasonably related to the capital needs created by the development and to the benefits accruing to the development. So what that means is that you can assess impact fees for capital facilities, so it's only for capital facilities. It has to be proportionately and directly related to the impact that new development has, and that new development has to benefit from that capital improvement. So, as an example, this is less true here, but in a school district, say as Hudson, where there are 3 elementary schools, you can't charge this development that's in this elementary school district for improvements to that elementary school that their children won't go to. So those are the keys, is it's got to be linked to the impact that the development has. It has to be for capital facilities only, and it has to benefit that development. And any funds that are not expended within 6 years have to be returned. So that's kind of the other key, is you just can't collect the money and keep it forever. So it's really key, and again, we say in here, to assist in the implementation of the town of Litchfield's master plan and capital improvements program. That's why those are really so key, and that's why there's such an emphasis on the CIP, because that's where you really want to develop, obviously some things are already in existence and already in motion, but you really do want to strive to have those capital facilities that you're planning for in your CIP. And if they're not in your CIP yet, they certainly should be in your master plan. You got to have some way of saying, this is what we're planning, and we have an estimate for what it's going to cost and an idea of when we're going to do it, if that all makes sense. And so with that, I figured I'll kind of dive through it. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at the full report, but it kind of walks through the methodology in detail, but I figured I would just highlight a couple of things. So what we chose to focus on were what you see in the spreadsheet in the top section that's basically highlighted in blue. There were really 3 areas where we felt updates could be made that were warranted. And that was for schools, police, and fire. And the reason for that comes back to what I just said. In this case, in all 3 cases, we have actual physical improvements that are either planned and in the CIP, the new elementary school, and the proposed police station. So both of those are in the CIP. They have a cost. They have a year of implementation. So we can move forward with those. And then for fire, we have an existing new fire station that the town is still paying on the bond for. That's a capital improvement. It's ongoing, so we're also able to look at that. Again, that's pretty easy. It's a known commodity. I say it's pretty easy. There's still some things that you have to figure out. So in all 3 of these cases, what you have to figure out, and I'll start with the school, is what portion of these capital improvements do you allocate to new development? So in the case of the new elementary school, the new elementary school is, and I'm saying this off the top of my head without reading the report, I believe there's 190. There's a core capacity of 190 additional students. So we can't charge impact fees for the cost of replacing the existing school, the kids who are currently enrolled, but we can look at that core capacity and allocate a percentage of that cost. So that was the basis for what was used in this analysis. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where did you get the 190 from? You said that's the new students projected?
I'll probably quote it incorrectly, but there is a study that was done in support of the new school, and that was the figure that came out
The
of it.
max capacity was deemed to be 600 students, and we have 410 now, apparently,
Exactly.
in the study.
But we have dropping enrollment.
It's school capacity, not how many are actually in the
Okay,
school.
so it's how many you can fit.
Yeah,
All
That's right.
Okay,
So
thank you.
because the
Just-
school has the capacity to accommodate growth,
Gotcha.
it's fair to say that percentage
Okay.
can be charged to new development. So we took that percentage. So basically that is a matter of looking at the cost of the school, coming up with an estimate of what the cost is for that core capacity, and then allocating that to new development based on the estimate of enrollment that would be coming from each new dwelling unit, to the elementary school specifically. So you've got to figure out what's that elementary school generation rate, if you will, per household by type. So that's how that was done. I can get into a little bit more detail, but end of the day, there really are two housing types that we look at. Single-family detached homes and basically all other housing types. And we say all other housing types because the analysis, it comes out to be essentially the same. It's multifamily is your other one, as well as manufactured housing, mobile homes. So, not surprisingly, single-family homes are anticipated to generate, significantly more kids than, a multifamily unit. And the Litchfield multifamily units are generally two-bedroom. Almost all of them are two-bedroom. So that's why you see here, a significant difference. Single-family home is more than double what you would get for a multifamily unit. So those are the two different generation rates that you see. If you want to compare, look down at the blue schedule right below, and you can see what we're currently charging single-family homes is $4,311 per dwelling unit. What's proposed is a slight increase of $4,644. So that's about a $300 and change difference. It's not a huge difference, but it does go up. For other housing types, it actually goes down slightly from 2,207 to 2,167. And that's not a huge decrease. It's, $40 per unit.
And what is that rationale for going down with everything else going up?
Because the generation rate went down more for multifamily than it did for single family.
So the generation rate is more dependent on the housing type than the number of bedrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
It's dependent on both, because single-family homes in Litchfield, newer ones are typically four-bedroom. But the housing type is a real driver as well.
Okay, so like we shouldn't expect to see too much difference between the 3-bedroom units versus 2-bedroom units as far as,
You will see a difference.
Wouldn't it be almost double typically in a 3-bedroom versus 2-bedroom for kids?
0.6 kids.
It wouldn't necessarily be almost double, but you will see a 3-bedroom multifamily is going to generate more kids than a 2-bedroom, absolutely.
Right.
but it's, I guess, okay, so that number that they generate is still going to be closer to, that generation rate is still gonna be closer to a 2-bedroom multifamily than it is to a single detached home?
Yes, a single-family detached home is far more likely to attract families with children,
Okay,
far more. For probably fairly obvious reasons, just the fact that you have a home with a yard is generally more attractive. It's detached than in a multifamily scenario. But we also don't have a lot to go by. Either. We don't have lots of 3-bedroom multifamilies versus
Okay.
2-bedrooms, so it's kind of hard to figure out your breakdown. If you really, really wanted to get in the weeds, and we did not go into the weeds this far, then you would do, so we're using generalized figures, but you would have to do an analysis of the actual generation rates in Litchfield. And the only way to do that is to get the data from the school district based on address.
Okay.
And then you've got to, then you really could do that. That's more in depth. You could do it. Usually school districts have some concerns around that, but you can cleanse the data so that there are no names, but it could be done. So if we
Okay.
really, really, really wanted to get into the weeds like that, we certainly could.
Speaking to that, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
With most of the plans that we have coming here, it's usually more townhouse, condo type development. And we have a very small data pool to pull from in Litchfield. Can we go outside Litchfield to see what other towns that are similar sizes that have a bigger data pool on more dense housing seem to run with? Because
That's
our data sets can be
essentially
very
what we did.
skewed. Okay.
What we did was use generalized data that you can apply. It's not that, it isn't a substitute. There are very few communities, I only know of one other community I worked with that did look at the school district data and look at every single unit and the number of kids coming out of every single unit in town and which schools they went to. So you can do it. Most towns don't do it.
So we know we have new development coming with a lot of the townhomes,
Right.
but we do have the 3-bedroom ones at Dark Hole Farm, like 50 units. Aren't they 3-bedroom with a garage or something, even though they're attached?
Yeah, I mean, again,
But it
we
gets lumped
didn't, we
into the
didn't do that level of
non- you know, the
analysis,
non-attached,
but it
right.
could be done. But we did not ask for school
Yep.
district
Yep.
enrollment data by address.
Now, I asked Kim Kleiner, who's doing this for me, but it doesn't tie in the education piece, to look at the tax database we have. And you had to call somebody special for this to break down the types of homes we have here in town, single, duplex,
Yep.
manufactured. And then we'll factor in the new developments coming, just so we can see percentage-wise what we have. And then maybe bump it up against this, although I'm sure this is fine, but just make a sanity check, right? I'm sure we have more single-family homes than, you know, it matches probably what you have here, but I just want to get the statistics of the type of households we have and the number that we have. So I don't even know how many homes we have in Litchfield. I know I shouldn't, you know, say that, but I don't. So how many single-family homes, how many duplexes?
Yeah, the census in 2020 said around 2,500 and change, something in that ballpark.
So then I just want a breakdown of that, because we saw the housing assessment and we just want to make sure
Yep.
what's happening. Okay.
So a lot of that you can get from assessing data, you just gotta go through it, but it's
Yep.
there.
So it should tie in what you have, but I just want to,
Right.
Make
So,
sure.
I mean, again, we didn't do that enrollment per unit. If that's something that the town feels is important, we certainly could do that, and it would give you something more drilled down.
So, while we're still on the schools, the previous schedule, the school impact fee was deposited a certain amount in, they had 3 separate funds, one for elementary school, one for middle school, one for high school. Does that mean all of these impact fees can only be used on the elementary school?
Yes.
What, I guess, why is that? Why not have a total pool for the school district?
Because there's no other development that we're aware of that is currently proposed that's designed to accommodate new growth.
Okay, so if the school district approached the CIP with, we're going to need to add on to the middle school or the high school for some projected enrollment, which I'm not saying is happening, I just, that's the only way there would be impact fees available for LMS and CHS.
Yes.
Okay.
Or if you were paying off debt for previous improvements that were made to accommodate growth. So previously, we were charging impact fees to cover the debt on Campbell High School,
Okay,
and that was legit. But once Campbell High School was paid off, the debt was paid off, then you can't keep charging for something that you've paid off.
okay.
But if anything were proposed for the future, absolutely, that could be charged.
So it's basically every department needs to have, if they're expecting any sort of, growth
Yeah.
renovation, it needs to be on that CIP
Yes.
for us to charge the impact fees.
Yes, or at least in the master plan.
Okay,
Really better in the CIP because that's where we have real numbers. It's not something speculative.
we have a school board member on that team.
We
And
do.
we have the
Yep.
business administrator, right, is also on the SIP committee as well.
Yeah, and the school board's
So-
been very engaged, so I know that they're still sorting out, that kind of needs to happen, but yes, so.
no, I just think, that's kind of something that, I don't know that, people are really understanding the importance of the CIP sometimes, that if, we can't collect money for these projects, like that's a big reason why these projects need to be on
Yes,
CIP, and there's some, and because this would be a big change. The school district needs to know that we would no longer be collecting impact fees for the high school if they had any sort of plans or ideas, for
Kim,
those
did you
other
have
buildings.
something you wanted to add?
Yeah.
So, the school district approached the Board of Selectmen about releasing impact fees that were generated for the middle school to make their payment on their lease that they have for the upgrades. And legal went through and approved it and said it was a use of, proper use of impact fees. So if we are charging more impact fees for the fire because we have a bond on that, and the school district has a lease that will continue out 5 years for the improvements on the middle school, for which we're releasing impact fees, could impact fees continue to be generated to pay that lease, I guess?
So, I'm not sure I guess I'm not sure what you're talking about. What's the lease?
So the leases for the improvements to the middle school, right, so they made a
Lease on property?
significant,
They expanded the kitchens
right,
and added some classrooms.
So what are they leasing?
well,
Instead of
Anything
doing,
else?
instead of doing a bond,
instead of doing a bond.
they did a municipal lease purchase.
Okay. So there is, what you're saying basically is that there is current debt
Yep.
that is being paid
Right.
for improvements that were designed to expand capacity.
Correct.
Then
Correct.
yes, that would be allowable.
Okay, so we do
So
need to continue that.
Maybe we should reach
Just add
out
that.
to the school board
So
and
if we
let
can
them
get-
know.
If we can get a sense of what that cost is and and then some way of saying, what was the percentage of that cost or that improvement that was intended to accommodate new growth?
Okay,
So kind of going back to the elementary school example, that's easy to do because we saw what the core capacity was and we saw what the enrollment was. So it's easy to say this is, so if there's any improvement that's being made to any school that's proposed, that's designed to accommodate new growth, that's a legitimate cost. And if there is any outstanding debt that's being paid for an improvement already made, designed to accommodate growth, then that's a legitimate cost that we can charge to.
okay.
So if any of those things are out there, we could add.
Well, in all fairness, I don't think either the school board or the town realized that this was an acceptable use until legal did their analysis, and it just got approved at the last Board of Selectmen
Right.
meeting to release the existing funds.
And that is a little different in that, I mean, I have to look at that specifically, that the existing funds were established under the prior analysis, which may or may have included those improvements. I don't know.
I don't think
I think
the
that was the last
improvements
second.
were even known about at the
Okay.
beginning of that.
Yeah, this
At the
schedule
don't
is
know.
30
That was
years
the last
ago.
second change to LMS.
The last schedule was 2015, so, yeah,
Right.
it was way before that was planned, I think.
And I think, correct me, this was before my time, but I think that project came up and kind of jumped in because it was important. So isn't it relatively in the just last couple of years that was planned and?
At least that it was, I mean, I don't know if at the SAU it had been planned for years and they just didn't really advertise it, but yeah, it came pretty quick upon like the public, I think.
Well, I don't remember it being on the CIP, but it may have.
No,
I
it
don't
wasn't on the
remember
CIP.
this.
It was, no, it was kitchen renovations. It was not for that amount of money, but it was the kitchen renovations.
Well, I remember the
and-
renovations.
Yeah, we saw the kitchen
That
renovations, I
was-
remember that too.
Yeah.
And then the project kind of like ballooned into energy efficiency and everything else. That was the part that was, I guess, sprung on everyone. The kitchen renovations was on the original CIP plan, was it?
So, yeah,
I
and
believe
It
that
was-
even the energy, I mean, I can certainly go back
energy
and
improvements
read,
were,
and I can share legal's opinion with you, but even the energy efficiencies, they felt were extensive enough to accommodate new growth which qualified them for the impact fees.
And that could be true. In terms of I can't speak at all to the use of existing funds. We did not look at that at all. So what can legitimately be taken from existing funds, I can't speak to in any way. I could just say, going forward, when we looked at the CIP, when we saw energy efficiency improvements, those didn't appear to be related to new growth. They appeared to be to improve energy efficiency in existing buildings. And the kitchen renovations appeared to be renovation of an existing existing facilities. So that's why we didn't include them in this analysis. But if that's incorrect, if there's any reason why those should be considered improvements intended to increase capacity to accommodate new additional enrollment, then we could revisit them. But the project descriptions didn't suggest that they were designed to accommodate new growth.
Because I do remember, and I think you're right, Kate, I do remember that the kitchen improvements were on the first plan.
And there was energy efficiencies, but it was only like 1.3 million total.
And then they're all in the CIP.
Right, so,
But I mean, again, if for example, it said kitchen renovations, but it was really actually expanding kitchens to increase capacity, then absolutely.
I think it was.
So if that's true, we could
Have
absolutely
to double check.
add that to this. So
I don't know
anything
if
that's
it-
like that's out there, and frankly, for anything else too, if there's any other improvements that either were not clear, it wasn't clear that it was to accommodate new growth in the CIP, or for some reason it wasn't in the CIP, then those are all things that we could, we could add.
Originally to the
Reach
CIP.
out
and-
and-
Right.
yeah.
And clarify, I only thought of it
Right.
because of legal's opinion,
Right.
But the
releasing the funds.
So at this point, it is only the new elementary school that was included in this figure.
My second question is there a specified amount of time that we generally use an analysis done for cost? So like the analysis that was done on a future police station is really past its time. I mean, to go and use, I wouldn't use that analysis for anything that you're going to determine at this point. You'd really need to do an entirely new analysis. Number one, it was before COVID. We've all seen what the cost of building has done.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if that is something, if these were to go forward, would that really need to be looked at again before we adjust the impact fees for police?
For police station.
Well,
So-
okay.
Well, I kind of had a similar question. I was going to ask if we were to send these to public hearing now, rather than wait for, because the CIP won't be updated for another 6 months or so at the earliest.
Oh, no, we're going a lot earlier than that.
Well, yeah, because we kind of put together a new
Not,
school.
not, yeah.
Okay. Well, it'll be,
It won't be complete.
Won't be November like last year.
That's right.
okay, so, well, I was kind of just wondering, like, can we sort of approve these, or at least send them to public hearing now, and then do that again once CIP, which I would think would have an updated number on, say, the police station. Because I know that there's a lot of things changing on that, and I think even the school's looking at different, projects too. I know that the library's canopy ended up, costing way more than expected, so I don't wanna miss out on, 4 to 6 months of developments and things, waiting for that impact fee to get, or CIP to be updated, with more realistic numbers. Like, can we do that twice, or is that?
Absolutely.
Was that up to the
Yeah, I
department
mean-
heads to do this, right? And
Yeah.
I thought we itemized going out and getting new drawings for the fire station, because we knew the prices weren't right. Wasn't that part of the SIP already, to go and reevaluate anyway?
Architectural,
The
right, the
architectural
architecturals
They were on the
were
list.
in there. But I mean, the answer is yes, there's no limit that says you can't update these now and then update them again in 6 months, you absolutely can. The one thing that actually we haven't been doing that I realize is you are supposed to review them once a year in August.
I was thinking it would be nice to tie it in with the annual CIP
It really
update.
would.
Yeah.
It would just make so much sense, and you could then, every year, as a CIP comes in, evaluate them. If the cost goes up in the police station, you can increase it. I think it'd really be prudent to do.
So for my understanding, if our SIP plan had 10 items on it or whatever, and all of a sudden it balloons to 20, what happens to this number here? Is this gonna automatically go up, or are they gonna have to be ranked?
Well, no, it's not gonna automatically go up. It's gonna still come back to that same question: are the improvements designed to accommodate new growth? If the answer to that is yes, then yeah, it could go up. It depends on what it is. So
So we need to be careful.
right now, the school figure is proposed to go up, again, by about like $300 on a single-family home. And that's based on one improvement. So if there were other improvements, then it would go up more. If you wanted to, it's up to you.
Okay.
I mean, right now, we are charging $7,133 per single-family home. That's the current impact fee. That's a substantial number. Under this scenario, it's proposed to increase by $1,001. So it's going from 7,133 to 8,134. So that is another thing to just think about as you know.
Proportionally, Jay, is that number similar to other towns our size, impact fee wise? Are we lower or higher? Where do we fall? Any idea?
It really varies. You're fairly high.
Really high, okay.
But a lot of what it comes down to is what are you charging for? So for example, some communities have a fairly hefty water and sewer impact fee charge. That only applies obviously to homes that hook up to water and sewer. You don't have that, so sometimes that can be really high. Everybody doesn't collect for everything. Pretty much everyone collects for schools. If you have impact fees and you're not collecting for schools, come on. Town hall and library, that's not something necessarily people do, because most towns don't improve their town halls often. So that's usually not something that you see a lot of. Recreation, you do, and you don't. It's a real. So it really just comes down to what's a priority, what are communities seeing as something that has a lot of investment. For people who have water and sewer, that's almost always in there because they're very expensive improvements and there's a long payback. So that's really common and they're high. And then beyond that, it's all over. But there are towns that are charging $10,000. And then there are towns, I'm not suggesting that we do that, there are towns that we have a waiver provision for senior housing. Some towns will do the same thing for workforce housing. So, I mean, these are all things to consider. We can come back to schools. Let me jump on to police. Again, police was really very, by the way, if it doesn't, it probably goes without saying, we don't charge school impact fees for non-residential, reasonably. When we get to police, that's different. And there's a couple of things here to note. So just kind of coming back to police, schools was easiest because it was just so straightforward. Police is a little less straightforward. So there was nothing in the police proposal that specifically said this is to provide for future expansion. So what we had to do is look at kind of what are standards for level of service for the existing population, and then look at the proposed police facility, and we had to kind of come up with our own estimate of the portion of that police facility designed to accommodate future growth. Future, that's probably a good question to ask, during the CIP process is kind of, are you thinking of future growth? If so, how much? But right now, so that's just kind of what we did, is we came up with an assumption of the percentage that was designed to accommodate new growth, and then kind of once again broke that down on a per dwelling unit basis. Here though, you are going to see somewhat of a shift. It's not necessarily gigantic for a couple of these non-residential uses. So we tried to look at different ways of saying, well, all right, so for police services, what proportion do you say is residential versus non-residential? And then amongst the non-residential, how do you break that out? And one way is to look at police calls. We looked at the police call data, and it was really, we couldn't really see a stronger obvious pattern, and in part just because we don't have a whole lot of non-residential development. So for example, here we have office and research, parks with a really high rate. Well, we have so little of that in Litchfield, one or two calls, I guess, could spike it. So we thought it was really, really hard to do that. So what we did instead, which we thought was a reasonable proxy, someone could always argue it, we looked at the assessing data to say what percentage of the assessed value of the town is attributable to these different types of development, and use that as a proxy for demand. Perfect, maybe not, but that seemed to be a reasonable way to do it. So that led to some significant changes. So first of all, just as you can see, if you look down at what we're currently charging for a single-family home, $323, that's proposed to go up pretty dramatically. That's, essentially tripling. Once again, that's because we haven't a planned facility with a cost. So that's part of the reason. Previously, there wasn't a new police station proposed in the mix. So basically, that's why you see such a significant jump. Also, you'll notice there really is no difference. There is no difference between the charge for a single-family home and for other types of residential use, because unlike school children, there isn't really any discernible way of saying, a multifamily townhouse is somehow triggering less demand than a single-family home. There's no basis for that, so we just went by dwelling unit as a dwelling unit and assumed that the demand was the same. When it came to non-residential, there's a lot more of a difference. So right now, we're charging $150 for industrial or storage. We propose $146. That's a very small difference. That's a few dollars. Same thing for institutional uses. That's only a few dollars. But we also felt that the same thing really applied. We held the non-residential unit development rate just across the board. And again, the sample sizes are so small. For industrial and other institutional uses, it doesn't change much. The one that really, really changes a lot were the ones as office and commercial services, whatever that is, office uses basically change a lot. And then retail also drops fairly significantly.
What was the rationale for such a high office rate in 2015?
I honestly can't imagine. We tried to figure that out, and we really couldn't figure it out, other than maybe at one point there was an office use in town where there was a problem and it got a lot of calls. I don't know. I can't imagine how you would get that kind of demand, or why an office unit would have so much more police demand than, say, a residence. 250% more. I can't imagine why. I would have to imagine, maybe I'm wrong, that most of your police calls are going to residential units in town. That's where most of your issues are. Of course,
You only have
that's
one
most of the
office
town.
building, right? There's one on 102, like an office building over there. That's about it.
Yeah. So maybe I don't know. Maybe there were real problems there at one point. But it's hard. We couldn't find any rationale. So, and we couldn't find any really good rationale for varying between. So we just said we held it constant. Somebody else might have a good rationale out there, or some different basis. But that is what we did. So you're seeing two things happen here: a burden shift to residential, which is one of the reasons why the cost goes up, and obviously an increase because of the cost of the proposed police station, which, as we hear, that might wind up being higher. Fire department, the analysis was very simple, was relatively simple as well. It was almost exactly the same as the police. We looked at the debt that's currently being incurred on the existing station. And once again, had to kind of look at that facility and say, how do we apportion what was in that facility was intended to cover the existing population versus future growth. We did a very, very similar analysis of kind of what level of service per capita. That's what we did in both cases, per capita, and then we translated that into per unit and then into square footage.
To answer the question, so the the calls, if you're looking at the call information from the police department, when the police department stops, and they do regularly throughout the night at any commercial or office space, and they check the facility to make sure there hasn't been any entrance, or those are logged as calls. So there may be nothing wrong.
They're really just routine checks.
They're just checks, security checks on those facilities, but they have been logged as calls, and I only know because I asked the same question in the annual report on the police calls that get tracked, and that was the answer. They're normal, stops and checks.
So no one asked in 2015, and that's why that skyrocketed.
I have a
And
guess.
maybe lots of calls to that office building, I don't know.
They were just checks.
So with normal checks, if a new office were to come up, they would do more checks, right? So would that not be accommodating growth?
No, because that's an operating cost, not a capital cost. Because the other thing that we have to assume is that if a new house is built or a new commercial building is built, they are also paying taxes. So the town gets an increase in revenue from the taxes of that property that in theory is supposed to cover operating costs. So that's why the impact fee is a one-time fee for your impact on capital facilities.
Okay.
And so just kind of going back to the rationale for that, part of the reason why impact fees came into being was the state was basically saying, on the one hand, you have to accommodate your fair share of regional growth. A town can't say, we're gonna put up a wall and not allow any more growth. But there's also towns were legitimately saying, we've got all this growth, we have to build a new school, we're over capacity, what are we gonna do? So that's where the idea of impact fees is, yeah, that's right, there is an increase in demand for capital costs. And so you can legitimately charge an impact fee to offset the cost of providing the improvement necessary to accommodate new growth. But there's an underlying assumption that everybody is charged equally for general operating services, maintenance, et cetera, and continues to pay into that. So that's why.
Makes sense.
So for fire, again, pretty similar analysis that was done for police. And once again, it's not a gigantic increase, but you are looking at an increase of around $50 per unit for fire. Once again, we didn't see any good way of distinguishing between single-family home or multifamily demand for fire services. So we kept those constant, and very, very similarly, for the reasons we just said for the police, we kept the demand constant for the different types of commercial uses. Again, we didn't see a good way of discerning between them. One always could try. End of the day, we don't see a huge amount, so how much it would matter, I'm not sure. For the most part, though, you can see where it drops. There's a real dramatic difference between what we're suggesting for fire and what was being charged for retail, restaurants, and clubs. That's a big drop. And then you also see a drop for commercial service. Really, you see it across the board, but that's where you see the biggest ones. Once again, this is largely a burden shift from non-residential to residential. So, end of the day, if you look at what we would be charging for non-residential uses, it is across the board lower than what we're currently charging, and in some cases, it's significantly lower than what we're currently charging. So that's, again, that's something to think about. Is it good that, this proposes to charge commercial development less, or not good? End of the day, it's probably reasonable, but it's a legitimate point of inquiry. It's a legitimate, issue for people to think about, because it is a burden shift onto the residential side. On the other hand, overwhelmingly, most development in Litchfield is residential. So if you're thinking about what would be the greatest net return to the town, it certainly is on the residential side. In other words, the burden shift to residential is not that that's necessarily what we should be considering, but the burden shift to residential would probably result in a net increase in the amount of impact fees that the town is collecting. So that's the rationale. When it came to the town offices and to the library, there just are no capital improvements proposed, so that we had no basis of coming up with any different type of analysis. So we grade those. Certainly it's up to the town to decide what it wants to do, but we just had no basis of saying they should be changed, they should be increased. Maybe that's something we want to think about. Obviously, we know with the library, there's been talk for many, many years about coming in with a new library. If that's something that it came close last time, maybe it'll come close this time, and maybe that will change. If it does change, it's probably going to change a lot, because it's not going to be inexpensive, I'm sure, as a capital facility. So recreation was an interesting one, and again, that was challenging because it seemed as though it seemed as though it was hard to identify anything in the CIP that we could say was designed to accommodate new growth. That, as an example, could change. So if, for example, there was a proposal to improve and expand on Talent Hall to allow it to accommodate more people, then that would absolutely be something that we could look at. Right now, your recreation impact fee is quite high. As you could see here on the list, it's the second highest behind schools. Again, we just didn't see a basis for it. Somebody could make the argument, but pickleball didn't seem to do it. Paving a parking lot didn't seem to do it. And Talent Road was characterized as replacement of that existing Talent Hall. So, again, that could change. New fields proposed. End of the day, though, it would have to be a really, really substantial facility to result in any kind of increase over the $1,054 that you're currently charging. If you just think about that in the magnitude of the police station and the fire station, it's more than both of those. So you're currently charging a pretty big fee.
Just curious, Jay, so you mentioned, more impact as far as more people using whatever it happens to be, right? So
Yep.
in the same thought process, if we had more time at our current fields, would that still fall on the same impact fee? So let's say we add lights to the fields. We can use them now longer to implement more playtime there. Would that qualify or not?
If you're adding new lights to expand programming, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes I think it's just a matter of thinking about those things. Everybody doesn't necessarily think about that when they're proposing a facility. You're responding to a need, and you're not necessarily thinking about, what's accommodating new growth? Because why would you, right? Unless.
Just
Yeah.
future ideas to make sense to use what we
Absolutely.
have, because,
Same thing would be true for a school facility. If the school recreation fields were adding lights to expand programming, that would fall in that same vein.
They
Expanding
put
seating.
field lights on the CIP?
No, I didn't see field lights, although they did talk about it for the
talked
high
They
school
talked
at one
about
point,
that,
right?
yeah.
Putting the lights out
That's
there.
on here, that's on here.
It's not on
I
there?
think those wound up being, I can't remember, I think those wound up being deferred, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's right, it's kind of, you know, thinking about those kinds of things and articulating it that way is really helpful.
So, quick back to the fire station, did you say we can't continue to collect impact fees to pay off the fire station debt?
No, you can,
You
that's
can, okay.
what we based it on.
Oh, all right, I must have read that paragraph wrong on the report. I thought I read it as
Yeah.
we didn't take that into account. So
Yeah,
I
we
think-
did take into
Okay.
account and kind of, we did a similar analysis as with the police station, you know, figuring out what percentage we can say is was to accommodate new growth, and then that's the piece that goes into. So that's why really those were really pretty straightforward. Everything else was really a slog to try to
And-
see. It just wasn't there. I mean, there just wasn't something there that we could say is proposed. Again, doesn't mean it isn't, it just wasn't proposed.
And then you have the road, right? The road fees on the back.
Yeah, same thing with the roads. I mean, there just are no transportation improvements that are intended to accommodate new growth that the town is planning on paying for. So the only one we have is Corning Road. And fortunately, at this point, the town's match is zero. The state's willing to absorb that whole cost, so that's a
So
plus.
even the additional traffic on roads, on existing roads, the additional maintenance because of that traffic doesn't,
Because it's maintenance, it's not a
Maintenance.
capital improvement.
but if you have to perform that maintenance more often,
If
Or that's where
arguably
the
you have to
taxes come in.
perform that maintenance more often, but then it becomes really hard to figure that out because most people don't drive on most roads. So what roads do you drive on? I think is what it's gotta come down to. It's kinda hard to do. So some communities that charge road impact fees create zones. And you can kind of try to say, what zone am I on? And then you have to exclude any state route that is not the town's responsibility, so you're not paying for 102, you're not paying for 3A. So that's kind of what it comes down to. It's a hard one to do. It's where it becomes easy is where you've got improvements that you're proposing that have broad benefit. So if you have those make sense. Albuquerque would be an example, but just regular increased traffic is really a tough one. And you also have to subtract increases in traffic that are coming from outside the town. So you kind of got to say, what's the traffic impact of this house? And that's kind of tough to do. You could try to come up with something, but it's really, really tough to do. So we just didn't suggest changing anything on that now.
okay.
We did look at the RSMS and the town's kind of plan for road improvements, but pulling out of that, what's regular maintenance and what's designed for new growth is just really, really hard to do. It's mostly residential streets, and most of the usage of those residential streets is people who live on them.
What do we spend this on now? Do we spend these impact fees on trucks? Or is it only,
I will
Oh,
punt
that's good.
that to Kim.
do you know? Do we spend this at all even?
I haven't seen any use of highway funds spent. We did just put the report on the internal website for department heads to go out and utilize those funds and look at utilizing those funds when they submit this year's CIP. So one of the things we ask them to do first is to look and to see if it fits, right? So, but I agree with Jay that the paving plan for this year is coming to the Board of Selectmen this coming Monday, and looking at it, it's all residential streets for residential use. You know, very little of it are high traffic demand streets,
Okay.
so.
I will say, if there are any proposals to add additional vehicles, to accommodate new growth, that could be charged for, and you could do that separately. You don't have to bury it in the road. You could put in a line in here for highway equipment, highway department equipment.
Okay.
So if there's anything like that coming, that would be a legitimate charge. I think all we're looking, now we're replacing a fire truck, and then we're looking to replace another one that wouldn't fall in. But an additional fire truck would. Improvements at the recycling center could.
Wish we'd done that.
Yeah, I know, I know.
So the last couple trucks, one is in their operating budget, and one came from their expendable trust fund. So,
But they were replacements. Is that right?
no, one was an additional.
Oh, it
So we are
was. Oh,
looking
okay.
at adding additional trucks for snow plowing. And the idea is to get our contractors in our vehicles
Mm-hmm.
that are owned by the town, because there's real benefits,
Yeah.
Okay.
liability-wise, and so.
So that
Additional
can be
trunks could absolutely count.
with this road impact fee, or would that have to be a
I'd
different
make
line?
it separate. I'd just
Okay.
put it in another line, so that way you're not mixing road improvements with purchasing vehicles.
See, I'd rather put it all in one pot and let the highway department use it as they
I
need.
mean, you certainly could do that. You could do it that way, but new vehicles, additional vehicles, police department also, although I don't think we're putting those in the CIP because of the cost.
We haven't been, we've been funding those
Spent.
in their operating budget, although I think that definitely needs to be looked at, because it is an area that has gotten cut year after year, and now the maintenance on the existing vehicles is more than we can handle. So it's either a matter of replace or up the maintenance line, which I wouldn't advise. But if we looked at how many, I think this year, we said, there were at least 4 that have hit the mileage, but that would be replacing those
Right.
vehicles. It wouldn't be additional vehicles. Highway's interesting because we want to keep the vehicles we have and add
add to it?
additional.
Okay.
fleet.
Yeah, and those are definitely qualifying.
So how do we, is that something that is that an ordinance change? Is that
No.
just this schedule change?
Just the
Like,
schedule.
where is it written, like, this is what this can be used for?
So, the ordinance does say it, but the ordinance doesn't limit you. It
Okay.
enables you to
Yeah.
charge
Okay.
these fees. So if there is, something that we feel is appropriate, then it could either be added as its own category, or it could be put in with another category. So like right now, we just have a line that says police. What informed that was the station, but if we felt that there was other equipment or vehicles, that could be added to the police line. So it's just a choice, but it's really, I think it's up to you to say what you want to add or what you want to take out at any point in time, based on what the needs are.
What about stormwater?
Yeah.
Kim's gonna come back with a big list.
Yes, I mean, stormwater,
Now and start calculating.
I mean,
Wheels are
actually,
turning.
Shopping list.
but that's a really good point, because stormwater is not one that we've charged for before. And, there is a definite impact on stormwater from adding new streets, expanding existing streets. That's absolutely true.
I was gonna say, I mean, even if, the town, accepts a new road or something, that would have an impact on growth, right? In terms of, depending upon if it's a new development or something, could that be something that could be applied?
Well, you're gonna charge, that new development is gonna get
Right.
charged.
Right.
So it's gonna absolutely, you'll get charged for something.
Mm-hmm.
To that point, if people put in physical improvements, you can also credit them if you want to. You don't have to, but there's a provision in the ordinance that allows that.
I just have a small question. I'm looking at page 1, so I'm just looking at a single-family home. So I see $8,134.
Yeah.
Not including the road impact fee. So I go to the back page. That has the road impact fee.
Yes,
All right, so a single-family detached would be another 1,850.
yes.
So what's that line under it that says for all other impact fees? What's that, $1,700? That more? So,
All other housing types?
no, after that line, there's another category. You had one for school and road impact fees on the back page. And then you had another one, the last line is for other impact fees. I don't know what that means. Yeah, you're right, excuse me, it says all other housing
Yeah.
types. Is
Yeah.
that just breaking down the road?
That's just what the cost would be for all other housing types. So you're looking, there's a rate for single family and a rate for everybody else.
Okay, so it's 8,134, roughly about 1,850, so about $9,984 for a
Yes.
single-family home
Yeah,
total.
so just under 10.
And about 10K, so every time a home is built, somebody is paying this,
Somebody is
developer
writing
or
a
the
check for
person buying it or
$10,000.
whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
And when an ADU is built, does that get charged?
So that's a really good question. I don't think we've been charging for ADUs. I could be wrong. I don't think we
Double
are.
bill.
Isn't it just up to, like the building department, or how does that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it is an interesting question because an ADU is kind of technically still part of a single-family home, and so I think it's just being viewed as an addition. And we don't charge impact fees for additions.
But it's a dwelling unit.
But you are right, it is a dwelling unit.
You're trying to promote ADUs as well. That might stop somebody from doing an ADU, if they're gonna have to pay another
The way they're
fee.
trying to
detached
promote it,
and
we just didn't wanna.
You've already built, you've paid them once for the house, right? And then if you're
Yes.
trying to have an ADU in it, you're charging them again. They may not do accessory dwelling units, they might say, forget it. You don't want that, right, because there's a
Right.
housing crunch we have going on.
I've never seen an ADU get charged an impact fee in all my years pulling
Okay.
permits, so. It's typically going to an older person anyway, other generational moving back into the house, so the impact is typically more towards fire and police in that case, not towards schools or anything else.
What about undetached? I mean, we've talked about undetached.
We allow an attached. I mean, I think it's, at this point, just been treated as an addition. I don't think it's been treated as a new unit. I mean, again, that's a policy decision, but I don't believe that it ever has.
Okay. Question was about adding something for pedestrians. You had suggested at our last meeting a payment in lieu of,
Yes.
and where does that go? Is that
So that's
ordinance?
different.
Is that,
That's different
It's
than an
different than
impact
this?
fee.
Okay.
That's something that the planning board could require under its own regulations,
is that site plan regulations?
site plan and subdivision, yeah.
Okay. I'll save that for another time then.
So it's what is it, when you say payment in lieu, is it of the, whatever they're building, they have to?
Right, so if, for example, we have a requirement that says, as we do in the northern commercial zone, you have to put in, a minimum 6-foot sidewalk in front of your property. You can, and I think we do say, in lieu of that, instead of actually making that improvement, you could contribute the value of that to a sidewalk improvement fund. And the town could then use that to make another improvement. So as an example, in the northern commercial zone, we contemplated that sidewalk was gonna be on the western side of the road, and then it was gonna shift to the eastern side of the road. But just because you happen to be on the part of the eastern side of the road where it was on the opposite side didn't mean you didn't contribute. You're still gonna contribute, but it's gonna be a payment because you're not installing it because it's on the other side, if that makes sense.
And we do require pedestrian traffic be accommodated in our site plan
Yep.
regulations. We just don't have, we've just never kind of site plan by site plan, we've approved them without it.
Right.
So we would want to add that line to button that up.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are a lot of towns that do that, and in their subdivision regulations, they require sidewalks. But then they also say, because there's times where it doesn't make sense, or it's not appropriate, they can make it in lieu of payment that goes into a sidewalk improvement fund that the town can use elsewhere.
Is there something in the ordinance that it had to go to the Board of Selectmen, because they have to maintain it in the winter or something, right? Wasn't there something that the Board of Selectmen had to, even though it was
Yes.
approved?
Yeah.
I think that would happen for a payment too, because it would be, I was thinking it would be a fund that the Board of Selectmen was in
Yes.
charge of
They just wanted to
anyway.
have a say, you know,
Right?
all of a sudden
Yeah.
we have to maintain these sidewalks for
Yeah.
liability.
So what would happen in that scenario is if there were a sidewalk improvement fund, the funds would go in there, and then it would be the selectmen who decide, you know, when to release those funds for a specific project.
Okay.
Would that have to be set up like under a warrant or something for the town, or, I mean, to do that, or is it?
You'd think you would have to set that up as a fund, yeah.
I think you would have to set something up at least.
You'd have
at least
to
To
have-
maybe be able to,
Town meeting
do
would probably
it.
have to vote on having
Yeah.
a sidewalk improvement fund,
Okay.
to receive it, so yeah, that would be.
Is that a zoning ordinance you wanna set up or something? How would that, what do you wanna make that? You
no,
wanna-
I think it would have to go to like warrant, it would have to go.
That's what I'm
to
saying,
the-
so you're gonna-
Right.
you're gonna make an ordinance,
But
good.
it wouldn't be zoning, it would just be a warrant article
warrant article,
to
alright.
create a sidewalk
To create
improvement
the
fund.
fund, so
Okay.
that,
Right.
It's getting heavier.
Right.
Safety.
So that's kind of it, and there, I mean, there's definitely questions, we could certainly hold off on taking any action on this to get some input on some of the school issues, or we could send it to public hearing and get the input between now and then.
Do you want legal counsel to look at it?
Certainly could.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Do
you
you want
could.
legal counsel to look at it first? The 21-page report. Really look at page 3, but, yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying, it can be in parallel, right?
Of course.
It can-
how does, I mean, Kate suggested, putting it to public hearing.
I don't see a harm in that, because I would think that then the school could weigh in at that hearing also, or before it.
Right.
And just seeing like, I mean, the increases that are needed for like the police fund, I know we have a lot of development coming up, and I just don't want to miss out on some of these for the next few months. Like, I don't want perfect to get in the way of good. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, giving the opportunity to at least have some public comment and get, people's ideas of what the feeling is of the town. I certainly don't see a problem with that. If you want to make a motion,
Okay.
we can certainly do that.
How far, when's the soonest that we could have that public hearing? How much notice do we need?
Our second meeting in June.
Okay. So, let me find,
Does that
get
give
my
enough,
calendar.
give people enough time? Does it, highway was maybe gonna weigh in, right? You said potentially a highway vehicle? We just have to check.
And stormwater.
I just wanna make sure that, yeah, stormwater, right? Stormwater,
So
the
that's the
MS4, right?
19th.
Stormwater
20th.
and the highway department, they need time to chime in and look at this, right?
In school.
In school, obviously, yeah.
Right.
Yep, so does January, that gives them 2 weeks, do you think that's enough time?
Be June 20th.
Kevin Brown to look?
It
and-
would, yeah, it would be June 20.
June 20th, even?
Yeah.
A month?
Month, yeah.
Okay, I thought I
think
heard
that
2
would
weeks, so, okay, a month. Good, all right.
Okay. So with that,
Did I
I'll
say
make a
something?
motion to
No, she
move
said
this,
she's
January by accident.
I'll make a motion to move this impact fee schedule.
She's typing it in.
She's
As a
typing.
memo. Okay, so you're
So I'll
gonna make a motion?
to move the impact fee schedule to public hearing for June 20th.
Okay, I have a motion by Kate,
I'll second the motion.
second by Sam. Any further discussion on this? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Okay, so this will go to public hearing on June 20th. Okay, very good.
So Kim, you're sending a note to town departments, I'm guessing? Is that what you're typing right now?
Yeah, so I'm sending it to Kevin,
Okay,
which we've discussed the vehicles, so that'll be pretty easy to put together. We've had some issues, as we look at stormwater,
Mhm.
and the condition. So that may be a little harder to pinpoint, and we might need
Yeah.
some of your expertise, to figure out what is needed for, does it have to be a stormwater issue that's been made because of growth?
Yeah, so my guess, this is just my guess, that's probably gonna take time, and you might wanna wait for a future update to deal with the stormwater. I'm guessing that's gonna take more.
Right, so we're in the process now of working with consultants on grant, and evaluating all the stormwater. And that won't be done until the end of the summer. But as they've even just started, we've seen, I mean, there's definitely some issues that have occurred. If anyone's driven Pilgrim, right? You know, just time and growth and things that haven't as roads expand. As you look at some of the potential developments that might have some stormwater impact, I think we need to look at that, so it might take a little bit more time though.
and I would still, like we said, like to look at this again after
Sure,
capital
absolutely.
improvement solidifies their plan for the year.
Absolutely, we'll definitely do that.
So maybe by then.
Right.
So, do you want me to send a note out to, who else? Let's see, library and school
Sure,
then? Okay. Just,
Yep.
just specifying like, we're looking at these and.
Yep.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely,
and make sure you have comment for the hearing.
right. Mhm. Okay. All right. The next item is home occupations. Jay?
There's not a lot on this one. Wait, I'm not gonna, I was afraid to close things, cause then I close everything. So this we've really discussed a few times, so this is just your most recent version. And I'm not gonna go through the whole thing unless you want me to, cause we have discussed this a number of times, so the only difference here is is really two things. So what we had talked about doing the last time was moving forward with the same proposed changes to the home occupation ordinance that would provide better definition for what requires planning board review and what doesn't. And we added some additional requirements for a few different types of uses, most notably childcare and adult daycare. So the main difference between this and the last draft that did not move forward is there is now no longer a section in here referencing firearms. And then the only other thing that's different is the last time when we looked at this, it was an older version. And it did not include the language that related to vehicle size. So if I can find that. We had put in there a specific weight, vehicle weight, so let me just find that because I'm getting myself lost. Not by right, by planning board approval. On the bottom of page 2, business-related vehicles cannot exceed a gross vehicle weight of 26,000 pounds. So that was, again, that was something we proposed previously, it just didn't make it into the last draft. We also previously had under prohibited uses, we had prohibited landscaping businesses, and I think there was a consensus that that was not really necessary. And so we remove that as well. That's it. It's otherwise pretty much the same.
26,000 pounds, is that somebody who has an 18-wheeler? How much does that weigh? I have no idea.
Very big truck,
How much is that?
a very big truck.
I don't even know what a fire truck weighs. So can somebody park their tractor trailer if they're a driver in their home? The setbacks are settled, obviously, you don't want it on
Got
the
it.
main road.
Well, this only addresses home occupations. It doesn't address somebody who is not running a home business, who is just parking his or her work vehicle. This has nothing to do
But
with
what if
that.
they own the business and they're running it from the home?
Then this absolutely would. You can't, under this, you, can't have heavy commercial vehicles as a part of your business in a residential area.
But I think we do have that now. We have people who do that. I see them going down the road.
It
right?
depends, some are self-employed and
Right.
get paid by them, the miles they drive, and some actually work for a company. We have to go through each individual person essentially.
This is ruling out if you have a dump truck or something.
If you're self-employed.
You cannot
you
have
own
a
it.
home business, or you can't, if you have an 18-wheeler, you can't have a home business.
It's not saying if you have an 18-wheeler, you can't have a home business. It's saying that you can't operate a home business that is using 18-wheelers. So in other words, you can't have a business that has large-scale freight delivery coming and going from your house. That's what it's saying.
So if I own a business that has to deal with a truck, I'm a moving company. I say I'm a moving company, I have a big
Yes.
truck. That could run out of a house?
No.
It can't stay, it can be stored at your house and operate out of that house all the time, no.
That's right. That is what
I
that's
don't think
saying.
this is great. Well, we can have a vote, but I think you're putting somebody out of business. Why would we not want this? What would be the reason not to allow that kind of a business in a residential?
Usually that's considered a high impact. That's
Yeah.
why.
They have 18-wheelers
I-
coming and going on the street.
Well, I'm talking one, the person, a company of one. But I don't know what you mean. I have a contractor on my street who, I see some big equipment going in and out.
A lot of towns have a far smaller number, by the way. Some are like 10,000,
Some are
12,000
10,000.
pounds.
That's right.
Like, literally my one-ton truck that has only 2 axles, only 4 wheels, technically is not allowed to be parked in somebody's houses. So,
I mean, it's a choice. You don't have to put it in, but that was the thinking. I mean, the idea with home occupations is generally that they're lower impact, and that at some point you should be in a commercial area. But again, it doesn't have to be there.
I was kind of wondering if 26,000 pounds was too high.
It's pretty high. It was.
Because that would be one of, like a continental dump truck, wouldn't it?
yes.
Yes.
Right?
Tri-axle size is the big ones.
Yeah.
Maybe we
Upper
limit
wheel
the
to
number
front.
of axles? Or would that actually limit some work truck, like some smaller pickups? I guess sometimes they have 3 axles, don't they?
No, so anything above about a 3-ton truck is only gonna have 2 axles. They'll have more tires, but only a couple axles.
Oh,
But then
okay.
you go to the tri-axle, like the stuff you see at Continental, at either one of the main locations there, those are heavy-duty trucks, totally different weight class. They're much, much larger. So,
Right. The 26,000 pounds comes from DOT vehicle classifications. So that's kind of one of their cutoffs.
Is that for a CDL license?
definitely.
Actually, I think it is for CDL
Yeah.
license, yes. So, and again, it's a choice. We don't have to have it, but
Can we look at our database to see if we have people who do that today? I don't know. We just tell who has these trucks registered to them, but I don't know if it'll tell them if they have a
Can we
business.
search that?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I'm asking. I don't know.
Could we add something in to just grandfather them in?
They-
Yeah.
Yeah, we won't get that data. I mean, you would be grandfathered if you were operating a pre-existing business. I'm not aware of any home occupation that's ever come here that's involved heavy vehicles, but I could be,
Not
I
that
don't
I can recall.
But we do have some. We have the person who does our contracts for snow plowing. Runs it out of his house. Big equipment.
I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know if he's ever come to the planning board, and I don't know what the vehicle size is, so I have no clue.
Well, it's already in existence, so. Right, so that's what I'm saying, it's,
Well, I mean, again, if you're already in existence and you were lawfully operating, you're grandfathered.
I don't like it. I'm gonna
You don't
vote-
have to do it.
I'm gonna say no, but it's a vote, but.
Well, there's
I just
no-
think it's an infringement on somebody's right to make a living. Now, if you
No,
have 10 trucks coming in and out, that's absolutely a problem, I agree, the safety of the neighborhood. But,
Right, maintenance.
but if
yeah,
you
all
go
that
in and
stuff
out
will-
one day, you know, one time a day to make a living,
How do we draft that verbiage? To adjust from just
Well, we-
size of a truck to number of trucks?
well, we have
or-
trucks that have to take a certain turn, you know, when they leave, you know, businesses and stuff, right? Items like that. I just keep thinking we're in America. Make a living. You just keep squeezing everybody out. And now, again, if this is a business that's a subcontractor that maybe shouldn't be there,
Well,
that's
this is
another
not-
issue.
This would be under, so it's basically, it's the home occupation for planning board approval.
Right.
It's not by right. So I guess, you know, if you're going to have that type of business, you know, you have to come before the board, or the board has to determine, you know, does it meet that criteria?
I see it as, you know, there's certain occupations that are run out of residential neighborhoods. And large semi-trucks regularly in large residential neighborhoods. As the planning board, I think it's our purview to limit those, because that affects the neighbors.
But again, we're talking mixed use, and if you wanna, we're talking no in the commercial, you wanna have houses and their business, you know, part of the home.
Well, when you buy a house in a mixed-use zone, yes,
If you're running it
but
out.
if you're in a residential
I
zone,
cited an infringement upon people's rights, I'm sorry. I do, that's my personal opinion. If they're being safe and they're following the law on the road, and again, they're not coming in 10 times a day, I get that. I don't see it as a problem. And I also know of another person in town, now that I'm thinking of it, who has a business that is, they won't come in. I already actually know somebody that's starting a brand-new business who hasn't been in here, who's already has big trucks on their property. So, you're not prohibiting it, it's gonna happen.
It could, I mean, this is in here just because when we had our prior conversations around it.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not
We
attacking
came up with
anybody,
a-
again, I'm just saying.
But again, we don't have to do it. We don't have to take any action now on this either. The time when we would want to take action is, you know, really not before next November. I mean, we
I may be
can
outvoted,
do whatever we
I'm
want
just
to
saying.
now. There's no vote that will be required until then.
okay.
Tim, I guess the question would be,
Yeah.
how big a truck would you
Right.
feel
Or
comfortable
how would
allowing?
I'm
you
just,
word
if
it?
somebody's making a living being an 18-wheeler
Well, how
driver
big
out
a-
of an 18-wheeler, right? They do a moving van or maybe a dump truck, I don't know, I don't think I want that, but, again, some trucks are just big, you have to have that type of, a job. We have people who plow the streets, we have people who,
Yeah,
you know, I can't say they'll be picked out real easy in town, but they make a living today with big
Yeah.
trucks on their property.
and do those plows weigh 26,000
They
pounds?
could, if they're the big, yeah, that's not the only equipment they have.
I have nothing against sheer size, I have more of a volume concern.
Right, exactly.
right.
So,
Volume.
if we can adjust the verbiage here to cover more of a volume issue, which once again, how you track this, I support that, but not so much just one large truck, come on, you know?
Do you mean volume like number of trucks or number of
Exactly,
trips?
like,
Number
literally
of
volume on the
trips.
street, if you're in and out of your house every half an hour, all day long, that's gonna annoy the neighbors
I
pretty
agree with
bad.
that.
That's gonna impact the
a
road pretty bad. If it's parked in your lawn or driveway for 8 hours a day, that bothers nobody really, so,
Or if you leave in the
You know.
morning, you don't come back till night.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it seems more of a volume issue to me is how it impacts the town, whereas not so much the number or size of truck you happen to have.
Because they have a valid license, it's CDL too, right?
So,
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly take out the limitation on vehicle weight and put in language about, limiting truck traffic. And that's a way to handle that. And that would be kind of language prohibiting excessive truck traffic or something like that, because it would, would probably be something you'd want to address as part of the review and not put in a maximum number of vehicle trips or something like that would be
Yeah, health,
challenging.
safety, noise, all that stuff.
Right.
Where it can impact the neighborhood, so.
Not saving the roads, yeah.
And so to Michael's point, you know, they're gonna be coming to us anyways, so maybe we should just
Maybe, maybe not.
take it on a case-by-case basis.
May not.
Well, they're supposed to be coming to us.
So,
They're supposed to be.
Yeah.
this,
I agree, they're supposed to be.
this also says, it says where additional parking is desired, a maximum, oh, this is for client parking. Sufficient off-street parking should be provided for so it doesn't limit the number of like the number of trucks that somebody might have for their occupation.
Not right now.
Okay.
no. It could, but right now it doesn't.
Okay. I was thinking that number 4 under that, it says exterior storage of materials and equipment must be screened from public view. Does that equipment include a vehicle for the business?
No.
Okay.
Those are the landscapers, right?
We said equipment and materials, and then we addressed business-related vehicles, so the intent was not, because, you know, your vehicle's gonna be in your driveway probably.
Right, I don't wanna have to force that to be
Yeah,
screened.
so that was the
Okay.
intent was not to, require, you know, consider that equipment.
Okay,
It was if you had a big pile of mulch, you were trying to hide that, right?
Yeah, it was things like piles of mulch and,
Yeah.
Stuff that
you
they.
know, right,
You know, you
whatever
don't
other
Someone's gonna
equipment.
blow all over the neighborhood when it drives.
Plumbing
Somebody steal it.
equipment, right, pipes, stuff like that.
okay.
Ring camera going. We're waiting for the driverless trucks, Jay.
But we can come up with language on limiting trucks, that's pretty easy.
I just want them to be able to make a living, but not abuse
No,
the safety issue, which is what everybody
I know what you're
hears, and I agree to that.
I'd be happy to take that out and, like I said, just take it on a case-by-case basis when they come to us.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Speaking to having people come to us to make sure that we approve this stuff going forward, once we do put something to writing here, is there any way to have the state give us information, people starting new businesses or coming to town, when they do it as a DBA or an LLC or an S corp? There's no way to know it all, they can't inform us? That's only through one of our addresses?
I don't think the state's gonna notify us, no,
I-
no.
I mean, obviously, they would have to register with the Secretary of State.
Right,
But,
short of somebody, you know, in the legislature introducing a bill to require that,
Yeah, true.
I would say definitely.
Yeah, 'cause there's no way that, you know, unless someone sees them, we're not gonna have any knowledge of someone doing this.
We also have a whole host of businesses that you can conduct without planning board approval, and it's totally fine.
and I've noticed if you go on your phone and I go to like, sometimes if I go to the GPS, it comes up with all of the small home occupation businesses in town. It actually lists them, you know, where they are on this and stuff, so it's kind of interesting,
It is interesting.
yeah.
And they have websites
And
and.
they have websites and, yes, and go all out, so.
Yeah, but the idea is that if it's a kind of business that people conduct and it's not visible to the, you know, outside, it doesn't need to come to the planning board. That's kind of it. I'll strike that and maybe stick in some language about avoiding excessive. I think it's probably already in there, but excessive traffic.
I wonder, I don't know, so like a lot, like maybe if their lot size is smaller than a certain size,
It's a possibility
shouldn't be a
too.
huge truck, I'm not sure, I don't know.
Depends if they cut the trees down.
I think I have to drive around a bit.
So that is it for that one.
Okay. And so maybe next time, maybe Jay, maybe you can make a, I don't know, just, you want to revisit this and
Sure,
just
I'll make-
table it and
I'll make
maybe make a
on
change
that.
to that
Yeah.
section and then see what,
And we've got a while before we could vote on it anyway, because you can't you can't post it for public hearing more than 180 days before town meeting,
Okay.
so.
so there's time.
There's time.
Thank you. Northern Commercial Zone, I know, Jay, if you want to touch briefly on this, I know the town or the Board of Selectmen has an interest in doing some sort of a subcommittee or having the planning board do a subcommittee and with different town boards and so forth and departments. So I don't know if this one really, we want to delve into this too much. If we want to maybe save it for that portion of the workshops or whatever the town is looking to do. But
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly my sense. We had talked about it a lot, and we had talked about setting up, maybe a subcommittee to focus on this, because there's a lot of issues there. And then we went to the, selectmen, and they liked the idea, and you can probably speak to this better than I, of forming a, subcommittee, a committee to look at this with representation from the different boards. And that group may decide that there's other folks who need to be in on that conversation as well, and conduct some broader outreach.
well, 'cause my understanding was it was going to be some sort of like a workshop day or something where people could actually.
That was later, right? First it was gonna be
You still need a subcommittee to facilitate.
a subcon, like a member of each board, right? Recreation, conservation.
Talk about different
Planning.
things.
That started, and then,
You can correct me if I got it wrong. But from my understanding was, and Selectman Queenan and I were gonna get together, the board wanted to reach out to the different committees within the town and ask them to give some representation, not a quorum of any board, but some representation to sit on a committee, and that committee would develop and put together a plan. That part of that plan would be public outreach and how they choose to perform that public outreach. So I know there are a couple of selectmen that are interested. I do believe, and just talking with the departments, that they didn't feel that they needed to, at this point, be involved. So I think we're looking at planning, conservation, zoning. And I'm not sure if Heritage wants, if anyone from Heritage would want to be involved. You could even ask if someone from historical
school. Did we ask the
schools.
school?
Yes, I know
Oh, yeah.
schools
Yeah.
does want to be
Heritage
involved.
Commission, Recreation. Did we miss anybody?
Library.
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 They should, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so we'll get a letter drafted, maybe?
Okay.
I'll be in this week, right? I was in this week hiding in here. Got a letter to all the department, all the
Also-
department chairs and say,
Right,
if
that
anybody
was the
wants to
plan.
come forward.
Is it a
Okay.
subcommittee of the planning board or of the board of selectmen?
It was gonna be the planning board, right? I thought it
Okay.
was. Am I wrong? I think it's handed over back to the planning board. I'll validate that, but.
I believe that the idea was to kind of represent everyone, and I know the Board of Selectmen wanted to be updated on whatever the plan was.
And it's usually a subcommittee of the planning board though, right? Afterwards,
I mean,
after.
I would think so,
conversations.
just because it's a planning board that's gonna recommend zoning changes, so that would
Correct.
So
make
this is phase
sense.
one. So, yeah, okay. Yep.
Okay.
And Jay was here 20, 30 years ago when we did the last economic plan. Which is good. We have the history here, right?
Yeah.
And now master plan, it mentions everything that you had spoke about. That's 20 years old now, that plan.
And also, I think it's fair to say the scope is, beyond just the northern commercial zone. I think it's looking more broadly at the town.
Oh, yeah.
I have had a couple residents reach out to me since that meeting of the Board of Selectmen that seemed very excited in the concept of going out and actually not asking them to come here,
Yeah.
but going out and doing some outreach outside of town hall, so.
Is it too soon to put some sort of sign up or something for at the Memorial Day parade? Should
We
we
gotta
wait till Strawberry Festival?
Well, the committee has to be formed first, right? They have to have that discussion first, right?
Oh, I was thinking for subcommittee volunteers.
I don't know, did we say the public yet? Oh, the
Or
subcommittee.
is it all?
No, we're saying right now it's department, it's the chair. It's somebody from each
it's-
board
From each board.
at the moment.
and Commission. yeah.
Right, and what's today's date? Memorial Day's only a week or two away, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks,
I'm not
week
sure.
and a half.
So there's no resident, representative or something on the subcommittee, or was
There
that was just supposed to be
wasn't,
for the workshop?
I don't believe the board asked for
No.
any,
Yeah.
Okay.
any residents,
CIP
to be on the
Okay.
planning,
Right.
on the committee putting together the
But I think-
plan.
But I think the committee was gonna get together and then talk about an outreach strategy.
Right.
I think that was the intent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although we do have an energy committee that
Yeah, I've got people interested
is
in that
being
already.
formed, and that does call for residents on it, so that'll be going out.
And residents that aren't on boards, you know, what I mean, we have a
Correct.
different opinion than, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Residents interested in energy, conservation of energy efficiency.
So that has to be published as well, but we're reviewing it at our next meeting, right? So
Yes,
we
you're
haven't had a
reviewing
chance
it
to review
Monday,
the letters yet.
and it will be ready to go.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Do we need to like vote to form that or something?
Excuse me?
Do
Do we need a vote to
vote to
From the subcommittee.
establish a
put together the
subcommittee?
subcommittee?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
For the Board of
I
Selectmen.
don't know that it has to be a
chose
formal
that.
vote. You could, but I don't know
Okay.
that it has
I
to
don't
be.
think it's necessary, yeah,
Just check.
all right.
Nice.
Anything else, I'm sorry, Jay, anything else on
That's
Northern
it.
Commercial, is that it? Okay.
Great.
All right, moving on to committee reports, any reports from any committees? Kim?
Yes, well, not really a report, more of an update, although we did have a nice NRPC meeting. Let me get to the business first. Board of Selectmen meets Monday, May 22nd, 6:30 PM here at the Town Hall. Capital Improvement Plan Committee will be Monday, June 5th. I'm not sure if you were on
Yeah.
that invite, okay? 6:30 PM here also. The only open issue was the threshold for the library or smaller departments, because the 50,000 threshold, which that was pre-COVID money, maybe it really needs to be 100,000, I don't know, but the threshold of what we do with the smaller. We were bundling at the moment, but we don't know.
Right.
All right, so, let's see. As far as NRPC, our next quarterly meeting for the full commissioners is June 21st, 7 PM at 30 Temple Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'll just want to say that we have a Memorial Day service, May 29th on Memorial Day, 10 o'clock at the old part of town, Old Town Hall. We did have our annual meeting, and I'm glad everybody's still here because basically we talked about the housing assessment. We have a housing need, obviously, in New Hampshire, compounded with a workforce issue, development issue, and childcare also being a problem. So those are merging. So that was a great forum on the economy. The assessment plan of 131 pages I'm reading now, so we need to go through that. You also had a survey for the NRPC strategy.
Don't read it yet.
yeah.
We're putting up the final one.
Oh, you are? Okay,
Yeah,
so
read that one, it's better.
can we have, you have well, not the strategy itself, but the survey. Remember you wanted feedback?
Yeah.
So is
yeah.
the deadline, you're gonna have still more time, because I just filled one out, but, right.
when
For
does
that
that
Yeah.
survey, yeah.
Did everybody hear?
That's
I'm just
for
saying, if more
our-
people here can fill that out, that was better. We're trying to get the a strategy for NRPC. What
Yes.
NRPC is gonna focus on for our region. So we want feedback from board members.
Was it just board members or residents?
Oh, no, it's anybody, but I
Yeah,
figured I'd have you
anybody.
here.
Okay.
Did you send that to, who did you send that to? Did you just send it to planning board, or can I send it to Kim to get to other boards, or I don't know
Yeah,
how
you
it went
can,
out?
sure.
I was BCC'd, so I don't know who really went
So
to.
I think it went, I wasn't the actual sender. I think it went to the chairs of the boards.
Okay,
I don't know that it went to every board member.
so I can see if
I
I
can
can.
double check on that, but that's kind of how I think.
I just
it
want to
went.
get more data for you.
You
know?
got it? Okay, so maybe it did go to all the board members.
Here
I
did, but
didn't
I'm
get
not
it
sure the
twice,
other
so it
board,
didn't
like
go to
zoning and all. So, do you mind if I forward it again? I know it's on your website.
No, I don't mind it a bit. It's hard to keep the lists of every planning board, every board up to date. So there's certainly people, you're probably not on it.
I don't have an email address yet, so
Okay, so we'll
my
get that
personal one
out.
will be fine for now, I guess, but yeah.
So if I send that to Kim
Okay.
Kleiner to get it out to zoning, conservation, the more the better, right?
Absolutely, and
All
we'll
right.
make sure
And
everybody
our
on,
new-
this board gets it too. So
Okay, it took me 5 minutes to take it. It was a lot of
it's not long.
scales, 1 to 5, and then there was ranking, kind of thing. Not a lot of rank, but, all right, so that, let's see. So we did the impact fees, the housing study, I will look at as well. So that was really it, but the annual meeting was wonderful. We had a great time, very insightful, and we have to look at housing at this point. That's why I asked Kim Kleiner if she could look at what we have for homes today, what kind and type, because that seems to be their strategy. I have to say, I was a little upset, not with this, but there was St. Anselm did a study on zoning, and they did a nice map, and apparently they went over to everybody's zoning laws,
It did.
and I'm not saying they were looking for weaknesses, but because we have such a housing crunch, they're looking what towns they can have the 1 acre or less minimum, or more townhomes or whatever. So I understand from a state point of view, we need 60 to 90,000 homes. But when I saw that, I just saw a little animal on its belly getting, like, it's being, was what do the people in town want? So it's a strategic way, I understand from a developer point of view, and from the state has to get the housing, I get that. But I just felt like, here's the people who are vulnerable, go to that town.
We're one of the few towns in this part of New Hampshire that's still zoned RD. So most other towns around us are all non-RD allowable. So
I'm
Litchfield's
sorry, what is
rural development. So USDA loans work here. Whereas Londonderry doesn't, Hudson doesn't.
I bought my house with it, yeah.
No,
I
so
was like, why is it
we're,
here?
we're a real oddity. Being in between Nashua, Merrimack, Manchester, Londonderry, we're a real oddball. So that's why we stand out in this kind of survey so badly.
But actually, there
we
was a
were
lot
carrying
of
them.
towns that did. And
Yeah.
they seem to be saying the willing towns, and I don't know what that meant yet. The towns that were willing, and I'm like, I don't know. So anyway, I understand why it was developed strategically, but again, pointing out which towns have Swiss cheese in their zoning ordinance, I just think there's going to be a mad rush to those towns. So
Well, it's hard to do something like that and pick up on the nuances. So Litchfield has a multifamily housing overlay zone.
Right.
Doing this like statewide, a zoning atlas, it's hard to pick up on things like that.
Yeah.
Because it's not, it's
Right.
applies to both a commercial and a residential
Right,
area. And
right.
so how do you?
well, they did a lot of
So,
work.
They do a lot of work.
They did a
but
lot of work on that.
there's no way they can pick up on those kinds of things. So and the reality is now is if you just look at what's been approved and what's proposed recently, it's
coming.
also almost all multifamily
Right.
or it's manufactured housing.
Right.
When
So
you
that's
just think about what does Litchfield have in the hopper now?
right. So that's what I had her say, because if it starts to be report cards are going out for each town, or it starts to be just, are we carrying the region or are we carrying Litchfield? That's why I wanted that house breakdown.
Yeah.
And it's good to see anyway, because of everything we're doing with the impact fees anyway, so. Yeah, if you want, I'll forward it to everybody so you can see it. So my first reaction was like, I understand from the state point of view, but it doesn't mean the local might have the same reaction to it, so. But it's gonna be all over the board, so. That's all I have to say.
So just actually follow up for Jeremy, what makes Litchfield qualify for rural development loan? Why
Part of
would
it is,
another town not?
part of it's because we're in Hillsborough County. The other part is the sheer fact of our free space is far larger than most other towns. We have lots of trees, lots of farm area, opposed to, you go to Hudson, you're not gonna find half of this stuff.
Okay.
Per overall size of the town, right? If you compare
Yeah,
the size.
right, so just like a percentage of
And your
developed.
and your population.
And population, yeah. Our population is so much smaller than most. We're 8,500 or so. Some of that rough ballpark is a very, very, very tiny number.
Okay.
So that's kind of why it factors in. You know, it won't last forever, but for now, that's kind of where we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take it away, you can get it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It is a plus, because as you know, it's a very nice product to get into this town, with no money down to buy a house. So,
Okay. Let's see, Conservation Commission meets the first week in June. And just, I know Kim mentioned the CIP committee. I am actually going to be away that first week of June, so probably going to have to get some coverage. I'm going on vacation, so so I will not be here. But the Conservation Committee will be meeting here at 6:30 in Town Hall. The Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee did have a meeting back on May 4th, I think. I don't know if anybody from Litchfield actually attended. I know I wasn't at that meeting. I had another commitment, but I know there were a couple people who joined that board from town, so they may have went. I don't know. And what else? I did attend the annual meeting for the NRPC. It was very well attended, very nice. I think that's a great venue for you guys.
They do a good job.
They do a very good job. So, good job. And that's all I have. Kim, do you have anything?
Do you,
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim.
do you
Kate. It's too many Kims.
not make it?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Do you need a planning board representative at CIP then? Is that what that means?
If someone is interested in doing it, sure, you could do that.
I
I
can't necessarily
know-
commit to it right now, because I don't know my schedule, but if,
Yeah,
so if
because I know
anybody
I'm not
else
going to
is
be. I'm
open
not
to
going to be
it.
there. And I know that I think Andrew Cutter is technically right now is the vice chair, so he could run the meeting
Oh, yeah, he
if
can run the
if he's there.
Yeah.
So we may have to have him fill in. So
You said it was June 5th,
June 5th,
6:30,
6th.
6:30.
right here.
I might be able to do that. I'd have to
Well, thank
get
you. I
back to you
appreciate
on
that.
it.
Mhm.
So I think the hope is to have the department submittals by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
6:05, 6:30, okay. Unless
6:30.
anybody else is jumping to join
Yeah,
us.
and certainly anyone. And I mean, it is. I mean,
Right, it doesn't have to
it's
be
open
me.
to the public, so if you want to come, that's fine. Certainly welcome. So, okay. Anything, Kate, for you? I think you're-
Same news, budget committee doesn't meet until May 25th. But I just wanted to call attention to, it's not my committee, but, if people are keeping up with, town meetings in general, they are going to want to watch the most recent school facilities improvement meeting, because there was some developments on, potentials for, like, elementary school, changes. So just to have that kind of background information, it was just really informative meeting. Yep, so, and that's all I have.
Okay, very good. Meeting minutes of May 2nd, 2023. Those have been posted on the site. Did everybody have an opportunity to take a look at those? Have any questions?
Motion to approve?
All right, I have a motion to approve by
Since I
Kate.
haven't said anything all night, I'll second it.
And Ron will second it because he hasn't said anything all night. Okay, thank you. Now you've met your quota. All right, there's a motion second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approval of the May 2nd, 2023 minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained.
I think you have to abstain, right? Were you here last time?
Oh, he was here, but he
I
wasn't.
wasn't on,
wasn't
He wasn't on the
but I
board.
was
He
here.
was he's mentioned in there,
Yeah.
Right.
so I think he has to abstain, right?
I don't think you have to.
He doesn't have to.
I don't think he
It's up to
has
him.
but
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
if it was-
I was approving the recording of the minutes.
There you go.
Gotcha, all right. I didn't know if he was a member yet, okay.
That's all right. So, motion passes 6-0-0.
Yay.
Okay, thank you. And any other business? Jay, do you have anything?
I don't.
Kim, do you have anything?
I don't, but again, thank you very much for that form. Did a wonderful job as usual.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very nice. Okay, well, I have nothing further for this evening. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second.
I have a second.
Ron?
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstain, motion passes 6-0. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we will see you in June. Have a wonderful Memorial Day. Thank you.
June.
Yeah.